Welcome to the Artist Academy podcast. I'm your host, Andrea Earhart, and I am so excited that you're here to catch the weekly replay of my laid-back yet very inspiring conversations with other full-time professional artists. The purpose of this series is to show aspiring artists that it is completely possible to have a great career in the arts. And if you ever want to tune in and have your questions answered in real time by myself or featured guests, then just check out the schedule over at facebook.com/groups/Artist Academy every Tuesday to catch us on live. I'll see you there. This episode is sponsored by the Artist Academy Advanced Membership, a program for artists who want to up-level their art game by taking it from a hobby or a side hustle to a full-time six-figure art business. With weekly trainings that include step-by-step proven art business techniques, plus painting tutorials from yours truly and other guest artists who are masters in their field, you will be well equipped to learn and grow into the highly skilled and highly profitable artist you know you're meant to be. I've figured out what it takes to build my own six-figure art business, and now my heart is set on teaching aspiring artists like you to do the same. It's not hard, but it does require your time and dedication. So if you're up for the challenge, go to advancedmember.com. That's advancedmember.com to learn more. This episode features Arkansas-based street artist Jason Jones. I was so excited to finally know who the artist was that created this giant, awesome piece of artwork in my hometown of Springfield, Missouri. Jason painted this huge robot-style mural on a really large building in a popular development area, and from the first time I saw a photo of it, somebody actually sent me a photo of it, was like, look what's happening. From the first time I saw it, I was hooked. I thought, wow, I would have never thought to do that. And if you don't know Jason's style, just hop over to his Instagram. There's a link in the show notes of this. It's just, or you could just search Jason Jones, because his style is just so different and so unique. And that's what really makes my head turn towards Jason. So I reached out a few weeks ago and connected with his lovely wife through email, and we set it up for him to interview. And I mention this because in this interview, we talk about how Jason did all of the business tasks all on his own in the beginning and has now gotten to the point where he has an amazing team member, being his wife, to help him with everything except for painting. How awesome is that? I think there are so many takeaways like this in this episode. But let me know what you think about this week's episode with Jason Jones. So if you could just kind of tell people a little bit about who you are. I know who you are, and a lot of the locals here know who you are, but we have a bunch of people that are coming in from a little bit of everywhere. So just kind of give a little bit of your backstory and how you got to where you are.
Yeah, great. So I grew up just south of Fayetteville, Arkansas. It's kind of in the country, small town kind of stuff, but I always knew I wanted to do art. That's what I went to school for. I went to the University of Arkansas and just got an undergraduate degree in that. That was in 2000. Then after that, you're kind of like, I'll do some construction work,
Yeah.
you know. I had kind of a part-time construction job, and my boss would let me come and go as I got kind of mural work or art gigs. I did that for 2 years, and after 2 years, I got to a point where I could scrape by with just the art.
Yeah.
So since 2000, yeah, I've been doing murals and making art.
2000, wow. Oh, man.
Yeah, so this spring marks 20 years
Wow.
that I've been a working artist.
You're a veteran. Dang. So you're in Bentonville, is what you said?
I'm in Fayetteville.
Fayetteville.
Yeah, I live in Fayetteville.
Okay, yeah. So do you do most of your work around Fayetteville, or do you travel like to places here like Missouri?
Most of it's been kind of my local area, but this past year we kind of decided to start spreading out. So I've done some more traveling. I have a family and all of that, so it's kind of Like
Yeah.
when you have kids, it makes it kind of different for traveling, and that can be difficult. But
Yeah, for
yeah,
sure.
no, I've always had work there. Was about for the first 15 years or so, I did a lot of like kids rooms was about a third of it, and then I did a lot of like corporate kind of art. I'd paint backdrops and stuff for
Oh,
like Walmart vendors and things for like trade shows. And then I
oh,
did a lot of commercial stuff. Like I've actually done, I don't know if they're all still there, but I've done like 20 murals at the University of Arkansas in different buildings. And
oh,
so,
wow.
and then since then, I've kind of just went in the public art direction more.
So what made you go in the public art direction more so than any other? Because I'm also in that direction, but I like that. I like to hear it from other artists of like why.
I did all the kids' rooms and stuff, and I love doing that. But for my wife and my brother-in-law, we opened a little shop one time, and we sold like local handmade goods. We had that for a couple of years, and the property owner let me do a mural on the side of the building. That was really my first big public thing. And I got more response from that than I did from the previous 15 years of doing stuff in homes.
Yeah.
There's just more eyes on it and an excitement about it. And I love that. More people
Good.
connected.
Yeah,
And
good. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, because I mean, with me finding you too, it was a public art piece here in Farmers Park. I was just like, whoa, that's so big and beautiful and awesome. Like, so yeah, I could definitely see how that aspect is very luring and can get way more jobs than just kind of sitting in your studio.
yeah, definitely. Because you're
Yeah.
there on site, like you're constantly meeting people. And I mean, I have people pull over the side of the road just to talk to you. So
Yeah, yeah, it's kind of like a billboard for your art
it
too.
is, yeah.
A lot of people see it, and even if they don't know who painted it, like eventually they'll find out, or eventually
Hmm.
they'll go up to the wall and like see who did it. And it's so funny too. Like I painted the large butterfly wings here in Springfield
Hmm.
downtown, and there's so many people that are like, I love those wings, but I have no idea who painted it. I'm like, my name is at the bottom. Like
Yeah,
it's
I always put my name down there.
exactly.
The tag, yeah.
Yeah, but it makes you recognized by people. So, and if anything, instead of like having to like kind of pitch yourself to someone and be like, oh, this is what I do and show them like pictures of the stuff that you do in house, you can be like, oh, do you know that one mural? And they're like, oh yeah, it kind of gives you
Yeah.
credibility in a way.
Yeah. And another thing is with the public art, there's I don't know, when I'm doing stuff in homes or for a business, it's like client-based ideas.
Yeah.
And when you get into more of the public art, there's just I don't know, you end up having more creative freedom. And I've done the stuff I'm most proud of has ended up being public pieces.
For sure. So this is kind of a little off the cuff, but whenever you go to create a piece of public art, and your stuff is just so unique and so cool, and it makes people look and think and talk, and I think that's the best thing that a public art piece can do. And so where did you come up with your style of like the robots with like the things and like it's so cool.
Uh, I usually tell people I have like the brain of a 10-year-old boy in a 44-year-old body, basically. So I don't really know. It comes from many directions. Of course, there is some back and forth with the clients, trying to get something that they're excited about too. But I don't know. When I do a public piece, it's always the first thing in my mind is like, how can I make something that like a child's going to be really excited about? I don't know why I always put that first. I know it's difficult to make all adults happy
Yeah,
sometimes. So it's like, I
true.
just aim for the kids.
Ooh,
And I don't know if that maybe directs the style some. Some
I
of
can
it
see
too
that.
is just, for me, art's always been a bit of a therapy. I've always been kind of an anxious, nervous person.
Yeah.
And when I'm just making something really whimsical and happy, that kind of puts me in that mind frame and just helps me mentally. So
Yes, I love that. And I feel like your art. I didn't even really think kid when I look at it, but now that you say that, I'm like I could so see how kids would love that too. And it's almost just like connecting into all of our inner childs in a way,
Hmm.
and we're just like, oh, that's so cool, because
Yeah,
we're all children, that have been like forced to grow up in a way, and so anything
yeah,
that can bring us back, it's like, yeah, that's a win-win. Oh man.
yeah. It just makes it more fun to paint them too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Well, I was looking on here. We had a comment like five minutes ago from somebody that said, Fayetteville appreciates you, Jason. So I just wanted
Oh,
to
well,
mention that.
I appreciate Fayetteville. It's been very good to me. Being a working artist is a great place to be.
It is. It is. I love Arkansas too, even though it's not too far, but just the hills in Arkansas and just the people, and it's just great.
Yeah,
Everybody's so nice in the Midwest.
yeah, the Ozarks are just great.
Exactly.
You know,
So we'll get to some of the questions. What makes up your typical workday, and how many hours do you spend painting?
uh, it kind of just varies. I, I am a workaholic, I guess, when it comes to painting.
Yeah.
It still feels like play to me, so I guess it's work, but it's still fun. But
Yeah.
it depends on kind of what I'm working on. Of course, on when I'm doing a mural, I'm just kind of like I just take snack breaks and I'm working like there's no I'm not doing anything else but working. But then when I'm working on proposals, I kind of jump around. Yeah, it just kind of depends
Yeah.
on the project, I guess, and how long I'm going. And
For sure. I think that's an answer that a lot of artists give. They're like, we don't have a typical work day,
yeah, it's kind of like you just take breaks when you can. It's picked up a lot the past few years for me, so it's just get it when I can, and try to enjoy it when I get a downtime.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. It's definitely a feast or famine
Yeah.
kind of an industry. And I just want to mention too, I talked to your wife, and so
Yeah.
your wife is your manager, I could say.
She is, yeah. So a couple years ago, she quit her office job. She worked for the University of Arkansas, and she has her master's in like child development, and she did kind of like a
Wow.
research job, and she liked it. But I think, yeah, just the office life was, she was just kind of wanted a break from it.
Yeah.
And we had gotten to a point where we saved money and everything and paid off debt, and we're like, let's try this.
Let's take a
And
chance. Yeah.
it's been wonderful. Like, it's relieved so much stress off me. She's really good and strong at the things that I'm not good and strong at, and I just have more time to focus on the creative side, and it's made a huge difference in just growing the business.
That's amazing. And I know everybody watching and listening is going to be like, oh man, I wish I could have, a spouse that runs all the business side of things so that I could focus on art. And I just want to point out too, like you've been in this 20 years and eventually that happened.
Yeah. And it takes, I don't know, the way I approached a lot of becoming an artist is kind of a backwards view. I think a lot of people create their art and then like, how can I get a lot of money for it? Where I came into when I started doing it, I kind of just made the decision like, I know I'm not going to make a lot of money, and at least in the beginning. So I was just always like, how can I live off less? And we just created a very simple lifestyle. So we don't spend much money, and we're very content and happy, and we get to do what we want. So
Exactly. I love that. I love hearing that too, because a lot of with like social media nowadays, they see someone building a big house and doing this and going to this place, and you're just like, oh, I want to do that too. But I love when you're like, no, just sticking to your roots. And I love what I do. I don't want to put pressure on my art. I think that's a big thing too. A lot of people put too much pressure on their art and expect it to provide for them, rather than just being like, I'm gonna live simply and happy, which is the most important thing.
yeah. Yeah, there was a book my mom gave me right after college. I read it. It was called Your Money or Your Life, and it had a big impact on me. I've probably read it 5 times since. But yeah, it kind of comes down to that. Just like, I don't know, when you start weighing the external cost of like an office job, and I don't know, you end up, I'm like, I make less money than if I worked in this office, but I'm happier in my lifestyle. I spend less money as an artist, So it just makes financial sense for me to do what makes me happy and
Yeah.
live simply.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that would be a really good book for a lot of artists to read who are like making the jump into full time too.
Hmm.
Because a lot of people are listening to this, they're like, I love art. How do I, how do I do it for a living? And I think that's a really good point to start
Yeah.
out. Like, don't expect it to right away, fill up how much money you're making at your current job. Like, just kind of live less.
Yeah.
And
And it's still same, even after doing it 20 years, it's still ups and downs. I have years I make more, some years I make less.
yeah,
So you just have to learn to save and you just write it out. Then now I actually enjoy when if I have a downtime, before I would worry, and now I'm like, oh, we're cool. Like,
oh, really? Oh, good. Like
we have,
I hope I get to that point because I'm like, I try to chill out and I'm like, okay, yeah, this is nice. And I'm like, but what if it doesn't pick up again? And then in
yeah,
2 weeks it does and I'm super busy again. And I'm like, why didn't I take advantage of and just relaxed?
I think I've had enough of the ups and downs now that I know it's going to get crazy again eventually. So I'm just like, cool. Let's chill.
Good, good. I love your mentality on just life so far that I've learned. Can you talk us through your painting process? Are there any methods or techniques that you've picked up through your years of experience? Do you project it? Because I project a lot of mine when it's big scale. Do you just draw it out? What's the
I
process?
just draw it out. It depends on the space. There's been a couple times I've used a projector when it's lettering, when I've had fonts, just because I don't enjoy doing lettering that much.
Yeah.
It's just so tight and clean.
It's a
But
different thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
it really is. But no, I tend to grid. If it's a smaller wall, I can usually freehand it. But if it gets to a certain scale, yeah, I grid things out.
Yeah.
But yeah, most of my techniques and stuff I've learned. I mean, I started doing this before YouTube and podcasts. So, and they don't teach you anything like that when I went to school. As far as mural wise, it was just like traditional oil painting on canvas kind of stuff. So I picked up a lot of stuff from house painters, and it was just kind of all over the place. And like,
Yeah.
I don't know, I'd just try something and figure it out until I figured out what worked. I got into spray guns. Basically, a house painter let me use one of theirs. And then I was hooked on that, for basically ever.
Yeah. Yeah. So you use a lot of spray paint or brush
I
paint?
don't use spray paint. I bought an HVLP gun. It's a high pressure, low volume. It's kind of a gravity. I use it a lot. I do a lot of like background fades and drop shadows and things. And I'll use that. And then I have an airless sprayer and I use rollers, brushes. But yeah, I've never picked up spray paint.
A little bit of everything.
A
So
lot.
do you use your airless more than you use a brush?
I'd say it's pretty 50-50. It just depends on what part I'm working on and what the look, if I want soft edges, I'll use the spray gun. If I want some clean, tight trim part, I'll use brush. But I jump back and forth.
Very cool. I love to hear that just because it's so different, like and not a lot of people will think of that. And
Yeah,
go ahead.
sorry.
Sorry.
I do, yeah, with the spray gun, I do a lot of stuff people don't really, it's like subtle, like people don't see it. Like I think like the one you saw, or the two that I've done in Springfield, like I worked with the color of the buildings, but I did a whole fade in the background. So it's like, you don't notice it right off the bat, but like the mural with the robot fades from like a dark gray almost to a white across the whole wall. And then there's a
Oh,
drop shadow, which it adds this little subtle element. I do that
oh yeah.
with almost all my murals. But yeah, most people, I'll spend a week just working on the fade. No one notices it most of the time, but it is this
Wow.
little something that, I don't know, adds an extra element to
For sure. I'm going to pay attention to that the next time I drive past that. I love that because the first thing I see really as an artist is your shadow. And I'm like,
Hmm.
oh, that shadow is so good. And it adds so much just 3D effect to it.
Well, even the shadows, because there's a gradient on the background, I have to
Yeah.
change the shadow. So the color of the shadow is a gradient too. I didn't make it real strong, but you'll notice the shadow fades as it gets into the darker background.
Oh, wow. Okay. I'm gonna have to check this out. Yeah. Also, how do you mix your shadows? Because like the first thing whenever I see a painting like that and I'm like, oh, that's so good. I wonder how I did it. Um, so like the shadow, because like my first thing would be like to take the wall color and add a little bit of
Hmm.
black. Um, what do you do?
Yeah, that's basically what I do. I mean, I don't always use black. Sometimes if I want it to be a warm feel, I'll add like a little like dark umber color, or if cool, I'll add like a bluish color.
Okay.
But yeah, it's kind of similar. Um,
Okay.
yeah, I always like for my work to blend with the surroundings, so I always work with the colors that are already in the environment or on the wall.
For sure. How long did it take you to do that robot that's here at Farmers Park?
Uh, it took longer than I wanted because I had
Like
some
everything.
issues with the wind and the lift broke down. I lost some
Oh,
days. Yeah, I was there, I think about maybe a little over 2 weeks, but actual painting it was probably a little over a week. But
okay.
yeah, my lift, that was the first time I've had a lift breakdown on me. And it was like Saturday at like almost like 6 o'clock, and I had 10% of battery life on my phone. And fortunately, I wasn't very high, so I could climb down.
Oh my gosh.
I was only
Wow.
maybe, I don't know, the bottom of the lift was maybe 12 feet up. Um,
Okay. Yeah.
so, but
Thank
yeah,
gosh.
I was like, crap, no one's around, because it's like late afternoon. But I don't know, it worked out. They had to order parts, so I lost several days waiting for them to
Dang.
fix the lift. But then, yeah, also I had real issues with the wind there because I do the spraying. It was so windy right there. I was getting real bad overspray. So yeah, don't look at that mural for my cleanest gradient because
I
it
would not
was,
even notice, but
it's,
huh,
yeah,
that's so
but
interesting. Okay. And yeah, because it could, I imagine it could be like a wind tunnel kind of a thing.
yeah, I don't know. There's like the freeway right next to it and it's kind of open, but
Mhm.
yeah, it was, and then I was worried about getting overspray and there's like lots of nice cars right down below me. So, which I've had that happen too. It can be
Oh,
dealing with.
you've had that happen?
One time it wasn't bad and it was just one car and they buffed it out like it was no big deal. And it
Okay.
was a car that was I would say 2 football fields away. It wasn't like it was, yeah, crazy.
Yeah.
Unexpected.
I've had people basically tell me stories about stuff like that because when I just bought my airless sprayer last summer and they were like, now be careful, like just you got to be so careful, especially do you paint in acrylic or oil?
I use acrylic.
Acrylic. Okay, yeah. So I would think that whenever the airless, when it goes up into the wind, it kind of dries, but
Hmm.
guess
And I water, if you're with the airless sprayer, it'll do really thick stuff. With the smaller spray guns that I use, I have to water it down some just to get it thinner to go through. So I don't know if the paint's more wet, it doesn't dry as quickly, or
yeah,
plus I'm like really standing away trying to feather, the paint
yeah.
on there thin, so a lot of it's going into the air.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like I just want to point out too, those are the things that artists that paint at home don't have to worry about. It's like things that muralists have to worry about. And you mentioned earlier that you learned from house painters, and sometimes I feel like I'm a house painter because we go and get the same
Hmm.
supplies and all
Yeah,
that.
I mean, really, I felt like that's what I was in the beginning because I don't know, that wasn't a thing here, in Arkansas. So it was just like, well, I'm painting in houses and I'm using rollers. So, so
Yeah,
It really does feel like that.
I've thought about that. Like if business for some reason goes slow and doesn't pick up, I'm like, I could always house paint.
Yeah.
There's always people always ask me to do it too. They're like, "Can you like I have a wall in my home, but I just need it white. Can you?" I'm like, "No." Like, but I can recommend someone. But yeah, okay. So, what is the one thing you don't like to paint without?
Uh, I would say a plan. Like,
Ooh,
I'm
that's
not
good.
one of those guys that I've met a couple people that can just walk up to a wall and wing it. That's not me. That's not in my deck of cards. I like to have, I don't know. I guess part of it is just you're out working in public. I want to do the struggle before I get to the wall,
Yes.
and then just have it go smooth because there's so many things that can, go astray. It's nice to have a plan for me.
For sure, for sure. And have you always done that, or have you learned that the hard way? Because my next question is, are there any art lessons you've learned the hard way?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I feel there's so many lessons. I don't know. I'm still learning them. It's
Yeah.
I don't. Yeah, I mean, I've always just had a plan and I'm type A, so I just like work it out, and I want the client to be happy and make things go smooth. So painting wise, everything's has went really well for me. Business wise, I've had to really learn, like that just doesn't come natural to me. Just the emailing and the trying. So the whole money part, I've had to kind of learn networking and all of that stuff. So that's been kind of, I've learned to take the sketch fees and, deposits. It took me a long time to kind of figure that end out, like the business side. It's just trial and error.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. That's part of the reason why I started this Artist Academy podcast and all of that is because I think an artist's natural element is at a canvas, sitting by
Yeah.
ourselves. Like we're introverts, mostly I am. And so we just kind of we like being by ourselves. We don't want to network. We don't want to, I don't even want to send an email some days.
Very much, yeah. And I'm
Yeah.
so lucky now I have my wife. She does all the emailing and, it's
Yes.
wonderful.
Oh, and I bet she's wonderful at that too with her
She is
experience in an
so
office.
good at it. I could spend 2 hours on an email where she can spend seriously like 5 minutes, and it's 12 times better than anything I ever could have wrote. And I'm like, how do you do that? It's great.
I love that. I love that. So, do you have a favorite past project?
Yeah. I don't know. I have several things I've done I've been really proud of. The past few years I've done a couple of the mural festivals. They're so much fun. I mean, they're not like a money making thing, but you
Yeah.
go and there's all these other artists and there's this amazing energy, and that's been some of my favorite stuff. I did the Fayetteville had a one that was called the Green Candy a few years back, and I applied to that and got into that one. It was one of my favorite projects.
Cool. So, a mural festival. We're actually planning one here in Springfield. One of my friends, Meg, is trying to plan it. But that's really the first that I've ever had experience with, knowing anything about them. So I imagine, Bentonville and Fayetteville and that, especially Bentonville, they have a big art scene. How does that process work? If someone heard you say that, since that was one of your favorite projects, they're like, oh, I want to do that. Do you just search online? Is it just a Google search to find one?
There's a whole mural circuit. I mean, it's a thing. There's just artists. That's all they do is just travel around the world. I know a little bit about that world, not much. I just haven't traveled that much. So the mural festivals I've done have kind of been regional for me in the area. But I think the best way is just kind of reaching out and, sending out your work or whatever, getting in an email or contacting them is kind of what I understand of getting in with them.
Yeah. Okay.
They're not much of a money making thing, but they're amazing at getting exposure. You know, every time I've done stuff, it's led to other stuff
Yeah.
from
Cool.
the festivals.
Good to know. Good to
Yeah,
know.
and you should check out it's the Fort Smith. They have the Unexpected. They it's called the Unexpected Mural Festival. They've done it for 5 years, and I've always just volunteered, and I've gotten to be an assistant. You would love it. They've got the best of the best. There's the curator. It's just kids. She's from France and has all these connections to these amazing artists and brought them all here. So I've learned a lot through that.
Cool. Okay. Yeah, I'll definitely check that out. You've inspired me to apply for a mural festival either here or close to here or somewhere.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so what are your future art plans and goals? What's in the works?
I mean, this year we have quite a bit planned out already. It's mainly it's been the past few years I've just really wanted to focus on gaining artistic freedom in my public work. So that's kind of the direction I'm going now because I've done so many years of just client-based stuff. So yeah, we're working on maybe doing another mural this summer in my hometown here. There may be another one in Springfield actually later in the summer.
Yes. We need more street art. Like, Springfield is still a blank canvas. There's hardly anything here. And so
yeah, that's kind of how it was here, and then it's just kind of partly because of the unexpected, and then I've really tried to do lots of stuff in our area. But yeah, kind of just you build a market for it.
Yeah. You show people, what's possible, and then other people kind of build upon that. Yeah, exactly. Awesome. Cool. I totally get how and a lot of artists too, like, especially when you're starting out, you get a lot of commissions from other people, and it's other people's ideas, and you're like, okay, yeah, like, sure, like, I'll paint, as long as it's money, I'll paint. And you eventually kind of get burnt out on that of like, okay, I kind of want to paint what I want to paint now.
Yeah, definitely.
So my last question on here, and then I will let you get back to painting, is there any advice that you would give artists who want to make art their full-time career but just don't know where to start?
I guess my first advice was, maybe read that book I was talking about.
Okay,
that was a huge
what is it again?
It's called Your Money or Your Life.
Okay.
And I know for a while it had like a cult following among a lot of artists just because it was so relevant to artists. I mean, it's relevant to anyone, but yeah, I would say like learn to be content, and just make what you want to make, as much as you can, and be patient. It takes a while. I feel like I'm still not as good as I can be, and you got to put in that whatever 10,000 hours,
Yeah.
It takes a lot of patience to get where you feel good and people are excited about your work.
For sure. And I love that just throughout this thing, you just kept saying that you're still learning too. And because a lot of the veteran artists that I've met too, like, I'm like, when I was like fresh in it, I'm like, hi, I'm new, like, I'm still learning. And they're like, me too. I'm like, oh, that's cool.
And it's new lessons every year. So I think, because in the beginning you're like, well, how do I get clients? How do I do this? And then now I have clients, and it's like, how do I get the clients I want? Or how do I have a work-life balance? It's always constantly in motion and changing. So yeah, it's a learning experience.
I'm just nodding my head throughout the whole thing. Like, yes. It's like, yeah, you want a bunch of clients, and you're like, yeah, I want to do this full time. And then you're like, okay, I can't breathe. And then it's like, okay, it comes back. And it's just,
and then you get it, and you get the FOMO stuff where you're like, what if it goes away?
Yes.
It never ends. Yeah.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah, I'm still in that. I'm like, things are good, but like, what if? Like, what? It's with the whole working for yourself thing. There's so many good aspects of it, but then it's just, there's so many like things. There's just so many things.
Yes.
And
Yeah, the one thing we deal with now is like, how do I shut it off at night, like to go to sleep? Because and that's the same at any small business. It never leaves your head. It's just constant work. But
yeah. I just took like almost a month off, and like it took a while for me to be like, okay, don't think about work, just think about getting married, because I just got married.
Yeah,
And
congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, and now I'm back, and I'm like, okay, good. I'm ready to be productive again, because like if I don't work, nothing's coming in.
Yeah.
So yeah. But yeah, okay, thank you so much for taking the
thank
time out of
you.
your morning. Yes, I loved our conversation and just how transparent you were, and just I love talking to a veteran muralist about just all the things. And I think there's so many little tips of advice that you've given to future artists or current artists who are just kind of just starting out, and I think a lot of people will take away a lot from this. So thank you so much for
Well, thank
coming
you.
on. No problem. Well, I am off to do some painting as well, as are you. So let's stay in touch on Instagram.
All right.
And I will send you the link. This will be aired exactly a week from today, and I'll send you links for everything
Awesome.
on the podcast. But yeah. All right.
Well, thank you.
Thank you
All
again.
right.
Talk to you later.
Yeah.
This episode is sponsored by the Artist Academy Advanced Membership, a program for artists who want to up-level their art game by taking it from a hobby or a side hustle to a full-time six-figure art business. With weekly trainings that include step-by-step proven art business techniques, plus painting tutorials from yours truly and other guest artists who are masters in their field, you will be well equipped to learn and grow into the highly skilled and highly profitable artist you know you're meant to be. I've figured out what it takes to build my own six-figure art business, and now my heart is set on teaching aspiring artists like you to do the same. It's not hard, but it does require your time and dedication. So, if you're up for the challenge, go to advancedmember.com. That's advancedmember.com to learn more. If you've enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and leave a review. If you review our podcast and send a screenshot of that review to me on Instagram, I am at Art by Andrea Earhart. I will then promote your art on my story and tag you as a little thank you for helping me grow this podcast and our Artist Academy community. I have a reach of over 50,000 on Instagram, so this is a little help me to help you incentive. Also, if you ever want your questions answered in real time by myself or featured guests, then just hop on over to facebook.com/groups/Artist Academy to check out the schedule every Tuesday to catch us on live. I'll see you next week.